This is your host, Tia. This is your host, Tia. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Top 10. Live. Geek Vibes Nation. Geek Vibes Nation. Nation. The Top 10. The Top 10. The Top 10. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another amazing episode of the Top 10 by Geek Vibes Nation. As always, I am your host, Tia, and I have with me the amazing Brittany. How are you this morning?
Hello. I wake up and I'm ready to go to bed again, but besides that, I'm pretty good.
Brittany and I spent probably about 10 minutes before this podcast talking about Star Wars, which is something that I never thought that I would really be into. But apparently when Brittany gets on the choo-choo train, Tia got to get on the choo-choo train as well. But that being said, that is not what this podcast is about. It's actually, to me, another one of like the best, I guess, cinematic universes, even though they aren't technically tied in with each other. Although I have heard like rumors that you can technically like intertwine them together if you like, but it is the top 10 best moments from Quentin Tarantino movies. Now, I was telling this to Paulie and he was like, there are so many moments. And I said, I kind of like that though, as opposed to just doing like, here's the best moments from Django, here's the best moments from Inglourious Basterds. It's like, let's cast a really wide net. That way there is little chance that you and I will pick the same things. Because sometimes I feel like that happens, and then we're sitting there scrambling trying to pick another moment to round up to 10. So I'm pretty happy about the fact that we are going to be covering all of Quentin Tarantino's amazing films.
I know there's so many. Though I'm still sad I haven't seen the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Is that what it's called?
I will say that as a big Quentin Tarantino fan, right, I know that a lot of people were disappointed with Hateful Eight. But I actually liked Hateful Eight. I went back and watched it a couple of months ago, and I sat there and was like, I don't really see why people dislike this. This feels like a Quentin Tarantino movie to me. And I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it was okay to me. I know that it was literally nominated for an Oscar. People loved it. I will say this, Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt were phenomenal in it. I will not take that away. Leo gave some of his best. Like, Leo deserved to win an Oscar for that over his performance in The Revenant. But yeah. So he was really good. Brad Pitt was absolutely like a powerhouse in it and looked damn fucking fine. But I, like, really quick, I'll try and make this as non-spoilerish as possible. It was like a movie in a movie, and I was more interested in the movie that was happening in the actual movie, because it was like Leonardo DiCaprio's character is kind of like a washed up actor, and it's him finally getting like a role on a really big TV show, so they actually showed like those scenes a lot, and I was like more interested in that movie or that show than I was in like the actual thing. And then it like takes place in the 70s, right? And they are like following Sharon Tate, and they're like alluding to like the Manson cult, and you thought that that was gonna like play more into the film, and it really didn't.
It did feel like a lot of what are they called? Oh, bunny trails that went a lot one way and then didn't actually connect.
Yeah. I mean, at the like very end, they like pseudo connected, but it just was very anticlimactic for me. I will say that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood probably had like the biggest cast ever. Like, everyone was in it, and I apologize for the sounds of Yonkers in the background, everyone.
I was gonna say that is okay because I have somebody that's just revving up a four-wheeler over and over and over again outside, and I'm like, why? Why? It literally revving it. All you're doing is going, "Hey, neighborhood, I know it's still early, but it's time to wake up because I'm awake."
Pretty much. It's like the people who are like revving their motorcycles everywhere. It's like, I get it. I get it. You own a motorcycle. But
All right.
I will say really quick for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, whatchamacallit, Scoot McNairy makes a very, very, very brief appearance. Like, his brief appearance could probably contend with any of John Bernthal's brief appeares. Like,
Oh man.
it's like you blink and then you don't see him. You're like, oh wait, there he was.
They probably got paid like a couple of thousand. They were like, "Oh yeah, can you show up for like 5 seconds?" And he's like, "Do I get paid?" "Yes." "Okay, I'm there. I'm there."
I want to say that I doubt he was probably on set for like an hour. Like, he literally, his scene was like, he had like, I think one line and he was there and then it was like, that was it. And I was just like, you know what? Good for you, Scoot. Good for you.
I want to know how much Brad Pitt was paid for that scene in Deadpool 2 where he gets electrocuted and you see him for 5 seconds.
That was so funny because I can't remember if that was like teased beforehand. But I didn't know. I was totally shocked. I was like, "Is that Brad Pitt?"
Right.
That was great. Yeah, no, no. I think he did that for free. I think I saw something that like he knew Ryan Reynolds and like Ryan was talking to him and he was like, "Well, I want to be in it. Like, I don't care. Like, just give me a small thing. I just want to be in it." Like, I feel like I had read something that he did that role like for free because he just wanted to be in it for like 2 seconds.
Well, I mean, his scene was pretty good.
Yeah, it was him getting electrocuted to death.
Right.
Well, Brad Pitt certainly had more of a role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I would say that I think, his character was a little more entertaining than Leonardo DiCaprio's character, but that's saying a lot just because Leo's character like did a really good Tour de France type of performance as well. Margot Robbie was in it. She played Sharon Tate. So there's a lot of people, like a lot of people.
It's funny you talk about her because thinking about Harley and stuff, I have been watching clips of the Harley Quinn TV show, and that does not rated E for everyone.
No, so I watched the first season and I thought it was amazing. Like, it was so great just how like unabashed that series is with Harley. I haven't caught up to the second season, but spoiler alert for everyone, they made Harley and Poison Ivy canon.
Oh shit. Well, it's funny because the scene I watched is from season 2, and spoiler alert, there is like a regular version of Joker without the makeup on, and I don't know the whole plot between that, but Harley falls down and he reaches down to help her up, and the way she flinches so bad, I was like, oh no, baby. Oh no.
They definitely explore, like, what I liked in season 1. I know this is off on a tangent, but what I liked in season 1 is they like explored her being with the Joker, how abusive he was, how like everyone sees it. Like, there's at some point she's in Arkham, right? Again, spoiler alert, she's in Arkham and she's like, Puddin is gonna come break me out, and Poison Ivy's like, no, he isn't. And like a year goes by and Harley's like, any day now, and everyone is like, no, he's not, Harley. But like, she keeps going back to him, and even after she does like gain her independence and she's all like, kick ass, I'm gonna be my own villain. Even there's at one point where he like kind of schmoozes to her and she like breaks down, and all her friends are like, what's wrong with you? But it's like, that's so real for people who are in those toxic relationships that I thought I like really applauded the show for even going in that direction. But they never once like said like, this is a healthy relationship.
Oh
So
no. I want to feel things.
you're gonna feel things, but should we get this podcast underway since we're just going in all different directions right now.
It's cool. This is the train wreck podcast now, buddy.
The top 10 train wreck moments between Tia and Brittany. I like that actually. That's a good one. Let's do that. but
Oh.
be- but before we get to our list, of course, we have to read. Well, I have to read off, not we. I. um, we have a message from a friend of the podcast, and it is from our good friends at the Main Damie family. So they would like to promote their Stranger Damies podcast, which is an ongoing real play D&D podcast from the Main Damie family of podcasts. Join them every Wednesday as the wild stallions traverse the many traps and tribulations that Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition has to throw in their path. There's elves, weird half-dragon people, conspiracies to uncover, and more references to the 1980s than Ready Player One. Subscribe to the podcast on all podcast services by searching Stranger Damies, and make sure you follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Stranger Damies. Stranger Damies is also a proud member of Geek Vibes Nation, and you can find us at geekvibesnation.com. Now, I love their so they're this podcast family, the Main Damie. They have Stranger Damies, but they call this a movie, and I'm absolutely obsessed with that podcast because they just like review the most horrible movies ever. And it's these three guys, Anthony, Dan, and Mark, and they have insanely hilarious commentary. Brittany and I actually did a top 10 with Mark for the top 10 moments from Snowpiercer, and that was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. I like that I actually watched the movie for that one because I was like, I don't know about this movie, and you're like, dude, just watch it. And I was like, I enjoyed that way too much.
Yeah, it was one of those movies that at first when I watched it, I was like, this is weird. And I was like, but I really like it. And I know right now that they actually premiered the TV show. I do want to watch it, but I think I'm going to wait for all of the episodes to come out because this whole waiting week by week thing is killing me. I'm doing it with Defending Jacob, and I'm doing it with Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, and I hate waiting week by week. So I think with Snowpiercer, I'm just going to wait for all the episodes to come out and then just binge it. So, but that's my spiel. We are doing the top 10 moments from Quentin Tarantino films. So this is up to our discretion. We're just going to have a lot of fun with it. So Brittany, start us off.
I was going to say this scene is so small, but it's one of those scenes that I think about a lot when I hold up my fingers to put up 3. And I think so we have Inglourious Bastard. I don't know why. Okay, I had this conversation with Erin the other day about how I didn't understand how Quentin Tarantino, like sometimes I don't know if the movie's a comedy or serious, and it has a way of being both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have the Michael Fassbender's character, they're at the bar, they're pretending to be German, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. He's with that actress, too. It's been a while since I've seen this scene, but they're drinking. You have the German soldier who his wife just gave birth to a son, and he's so excited about it. But Michael Fassbender's character, I think he's like getting himself a drink, the actress, and the guy is like knows who that actress is, and he's pretty obsessed with her, right? Like everybody seems to know this actress in it. Well, when Michael Fassbender's character says that he'll have 3 beers, and he holds up 3 fingers and has his pinky and his thumb down, right? Which you think is a huge ordeal, right? Like I would not have noticed it, but apparently the German way to hold up 3 fingers is you put down your pinky finger and I don't know which finger that is, the one next to your pinky, and you hold up your thumb, index, and middle finger to do 3. And it's crazy that the soldier even catches it so quickly, that he's so drunk, but even he goes, that's not the German way. You hold up 3 fingers. And the ensuing chaos over something as simple as holding up 3 fingers is absolutely nuts to me. Like, I know that seems so little, but even for me now, when I hold up 3 fingers, I find myself holding out the, like, thumb, like, the German way of doing it, because I think of that scene and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to get randomly murdered by a random Nazi for holding up the wrong fingers. But I guess it was just sad to see Michael Fassbender's character go in such a way, you know, because we had so many characters. Also, that led into another scene that'll probably be on my next, like, not on the next one, but for later down the road. But isn't that where the girl loses her shoe?
Yes.
She gets shot in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
That scene was pretty intense too, where she's like having to get the bullet out.
So that scene was actually on my list as well, but it's okay. I have a ton more. No, that scene is honestly one of the best scenes in Inglourious Bastards. Because I remember that scene. He's sitting with, you know, that Nazi, the one who's pretty high ranking, who, you know, goes blah blah blah, and Michael Fassbender's character holds up the 3 fingers, and I've noticed when I go back and look at it, because they actually don't say anything in that scene about it. Michael Fassbender has no idea that he fucked up, right? But if you go back and look at the German actress's face, she has a look of horror on her face because she knows that he fucked up. And so the whole thing that ensues there is pretty much the Nazi like, okay, let's drop the act. And I love that scene because then suddenly Michael Fassbender's character drops the act, stops speaking German, you know, speaks in his, like, you know, the character's supposed to be English, so in his native English, you know, accent.
The Queen's English, or was it Queen's, or the King's English, because I think they still had a king at this point.
Whatever that was. Yeah, it's the king. I love that. You know, and they're pretty much like smoking, and I think there's this one in that whole scene. He takes a sip of the whiskey and he's like, well, if I'm about to rap on heaven's doors, then fuck it, pretty much, you know. And he takes this sip and he's like, damn fine whiskey. And that is one of my favorite things. He's like, I guess there's only one thing left to say. And the guy who's on the German guy who's on their side has his gun pointed to the Nazis' nuts, and he's like, say a Wiedersehen to your Nazi balls. And that's when the thing starts ensuing.
That shit was so insane. Like, it's been so long since I've seen Inglourious Bastards because it's so hard to, like, just sit down and watch because it just tears your heart apart, right? Mm-hmm. And there's so much death. But I remember that scene and just going, oh God. Like, I remember this is around the time, like, so when I was younger and I had heard about Inglourious Bastards, you know, the way that they sold it in a lot of the trailers, at least to my understanding, was almost comedy-esque, right? Yeah. And so when I watched it, and I was like, I'm not laughing at all. I was like, this shit's insane. But then they throw in things like Nazi balls, and you're like, the fuck?
I think that's the thing with Quentin Tarantino, is he has this way to combine seriousness with also this like suspended belief, pretty much. Like, there are unbelievable like comedy moments in it, but it's like it's very like modern, you know, postmodern era, which in film is this whole like, let's laugh at, you know, like people getting shot up and blood. Like, we're in this society where stuff like that can be amusing to us, right? So I think Quentin Tarantino just does that really well. But I love that scene. That was one of the best scenes because freaking you don't understand like what happened. You're like, where was it? But then as the German actress explains later, she was like, he held up 3 fingers, but Germans don't hold up their fingers like that. They do the thumb. And so it's like,
thing. it's such like a small notice, but you're like, man, like it's you have to think sometimes. I think like why gets me so much is we see these spy movies, right? Where they're
Mhm.
supposed to like, intercept, all those, and you go, huh, you know, I try to think. You can make an accent, right? You can speak the language fluently. But what do you do when you don't know those small ticks, right?
Right.
And for me, like, it goes back to like, I'm trying to remember which country it was. I think it was Cuba and Russia. That the way that America found out that the Russians were working with the Cubans, I think this is correct, by the way, but it's that I think Cubans love soccer, but they saw them playing baseball or like vice versa, right? And they're like, they don't play that game, right? They don't play that like when they were like doing like spying. They're like, what? And it was because the other country, like Russia, was working with them, so they were playing different sports. And I was like, that's such a small thing, right? It's such a small thing to see someone playing a different sport than what they're, usually do on this base. And I was like, so to see like something as small as like 3 fingers, you're like, okay, there's so many like intricacies to like human nature that we can pick up on shit like that.
Yeah.
Psychology.
Well, I was just gonna say, first of all, I think Cuban, and correct me, anyone who's listening who is Cuban, but I believe that Cubans really enjoy baseball, if I'm not
Okay, then it
mistaken.
was that
But
they saw them playing soccer, which I didn't know was a Russian thing. Like, I'm trying to remember what Russian sport, but that they were playing the Russian sport, and they were like, I don't know about that.
I just think that that's the beauty of Quentin Tarantino's films, is that he really like has those small, minute details. So I really love this scene. I think this is a perfect scene to start off this freaking list. I'm already excited. I am going to go with number 9, and it is from one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies, which I haven't seen in a really long time. I will say that. It is Reservoir Dogs, which, if anyone is out there who hasn't seen Reservoir Dogs, it is a classic. And my scene that I'm going to do is the diner scene, the tipping scene. So, in Reservoir Dogs, you have all these guys who are together, and they're going to pretty much, they're going to pull off a heist, but none of them know each other's names, right? They all get names like Mr. Pink, Mr. Brown, Mr. White. They're not supposed to know each other's names. And they are supposed to associate with each other, like not really associate with each other, but, the leader who brings them all together, they meet, obviously several times so that they could all know what they're supposed to do when the big day actually comes. So one day they're all out at a diner, and they've all had like coffees and stuff. They're getting ready to, leave, pay the bill. And there's about like 8 of them at this point. And one of them goes, okay, like everyone put in $1 or $2, to tip the waitress. And it comes to Steve Buscemi's character, who is Mr. Pink, which I have to say, I love Steve Buscemi. I know that is probably not on anyone's, like, no one has uttered probably those words. I know that he's not like the most attractive guy or anything, but I think he's a great actor. I love all the roles that he's in. And I'm sorry, Steve Buscemi in Reservoir Dogs could get it from me. All right. I'm just saying. But
Uh,
so it comes time for Mr. Pink to put down money, and he doesn't. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he's like, I don't tip. And they're like, what do you mean you don't tip? He goes, I don't tip. He was like, what? He goes, I'm supposed to pay extra for this woman doing her job. She didn't come over that much with the, coffee and everything. And they're like, hey, these girls, they work hard. They get paid pennies. He's like, oh, and that's supposed to be my problem? He was like, I don't tip. Like, it goes on this whole, like, it's a 10-minute scene of Steve Buscemi's character, Mr. Pink, explaining why he doesn't tip. And it's like, it's just so ridiculous and so unnecessary. And at the very end, like the main boss like comes back from like either the bathroom or maybe paying the bill, and he's like, "What's going on? What's everyone's problem?" They're like, "Oh, Mr. Pink doesn't tip." He goes, "You don't fucking tip?" He goes, "I just paid the bill. You put down some fucking money." He goes, "All right, well, just because you paid the bill, I'll tip." He goes, "But in normal circumstances, I wouldn't tip."
What's crazy is like I Quentin Tarantino has all these serious moments, death, destruction, and then he throws in these random ass scenes, right? That go on, like you said, for like a solid good 10 minutes, which in movie time is a lot. And
Yeah.
you go, what? And you're like, plot. I feel like when he goes, imagination. But no, so even having not seen Reservoir Dogs, which I feel like I should, yeah, Steve Buscemi is hot in that one. I will admit that too, because you've showed me this scene, and I think it's just like how like appalled everybody is with is he Mr. Pink, by the way?
He's Mr. Pink.
Doesn't he have issues? He's like, I want to be Mr. Like Black or Mr. White or something, and they're like, no, he's Mr. White, and he's just like so appalled.
He has this bit, so that's another scene, right, where they're doing the names, and he's like, "I don't want to be Mr. Pink." And he's like, "Why can't I be like Mr. Purple?" And they're like, and the guy's like, "There's a Mr. Purple on another crew, you know?" And he's like, "Well, why can't?" And he was like, "Why can't we pick our own names?" And he's like, "Oh, because everyone wants to be Mr. Black, like everyone wants to be cool, everyone wants to be Mr. Black." He's like, "So I pick the names, and he has a problem." He says a profanity involving the F word that I won't say on air, and that's why he doesn't want to be Mr. Pink. And they're like, pretty much like, shut the fuck up at that point.
Just suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Like, and I'm sorry if that was like another scene for yours later on. I just like I was thinking, I was like, doesn't he have a problem with being called Mr. Pink? But
yes.
no, that scene is so awesome though, because I think everybody's felt that once in their life. Like if you've had a really bad waitress, right, and you go, I don't want to fucking like, blah blah, and you go through that whole scenario in your head of, well, how's that my fucking problem? And I think it's like he voiced everything that sometimes people feel, but then you still tip anyways. And so for him to finally give in, and I think it shows like the control that one boss has to be like, I just paid the bill, you fucking tip. And him just like still having to act like big dog about like, oh well, since you paid the bill, like, oh, I don't normally though, because it has to be such like a pride hurt in that moment.
He has to like explain, like, I normally wouldn't tip and I don't believe in tipping. Oh, and the whole thing is like, well, what if you go get a haircut, are you not going to tip them, blah blah blah. If someone shines your car, you're not going to tip them. Like, it's this whole thing on tipping. And for me, as someone who was a waitress, it's kind of like, it's hilarious to watch, but then I'd also be like, you cheap mother effer.
That's why, like, this like a side note too. When I used to work at Sonic, and I used to hear the girls bitch so much, like, I didn't get a tip. They had such a big order. I would sit there and go, we're still getting paid minimum wage. Like, we didn't get paid like waitress stuff. Like, the tips were just like an extra upon an extra, right? And I was like, could you imagine how much they would have bitched if they didn't, like, if they weren't being paid minimum wage, if they were getting paid like the $4 to $5? Oh, it would have been mayhem.
I mean, I worked at a bakery and I was making minimum wage, but I still wanted my tips. That helped. Tips always help. That's the one thing that I miss from working in in like the food industry are the tips. I'm like, damn it.
It was great until your boss took away the tip jar, huh?
Well,
Different story, but yeah.
people still gave me tips. I just put them in my pocket at that point. But I don't care. But yeah, so my number 9 is the tipping scene, just because to me, Reservoir Dogs is still one of the best movies in Quentin Tarantino's library, and I do actually have another scene from Reservoir Dogs on my list. So we'll be talking about Reservoir Dogs in this list. So let's move on. Brittany, what's your number 8?
I'm like looking at my list going, man, you know, you have so many good ones and you're like, I don't know if I want to do that one. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with it. I want to go with King Schultz's intro in Django,
Yeah.
which I feel like I'm going to have so much Django, but keep in mind, everybody's been obsessed with Django Unchained, right? Like, since it came out, like, everybody's like, oh my god, that movie.
One of Quentin's best movies.
Well, you know, like, and Tia knows this, but I hadn't seen it until like a week ago, like less than a week ago. I watched it for the first time because, you know, being quarantined until Monday, I was like, man, I need to watch something, and seeing it on Netflix. But so that whole opening scene is good because not only is it King Schultz's intro, but it's part of Django's intro too. And I think it's set up so well that where I didn't know what to expect. Like, you already have that sense of foreboding, right? That comes with anything that does with slavery. And to see them walking, and you can tell that their feet are bleeding, and you have the two men up on the horse, and you can tell that you have the utter lack of respect. And you sit there and you go, man, this is gonna be like a really depressing ass movie. And then you see freaking King Schultz, right? In his little tooth wiggling carriage, right?
Right.
And you're like, okay. And even like you got the slaves and the slave drivers, like both like looking at the freaking carriage, like, oh, what the hell is that? And just because I think I didn't know what King was at first. Like, obviously I knew Django turns into a badass, right? But I didn't know much about Schultz himself, Dr. Schultz. But I was like, okay, he's a dentist. You know, he seems like a very soft-spoken German man, right? Which is so funny that the dude, like Christoph Waltz, he always plays a German, right? Or an Austrian, which is like, I guess he is, well, German, Austrian, what is he?
I'll look it up. You keep talking.
But he I just like his calmness and his demeanor, like, even though both of what are they? Like the two guys up on the horse. Because what would you call them? Because they were taking them to a different plantation. But basically being like that his money was no good there. Like, they didn't want anything to do with him because they didn't like the way he talked. They didn't like the way he was. And to see, like, to know in that moment how different, like, that Django was so, like, had that assertiveness in him. I guess I'm, like, not making much sense, but to just see that I love Schultz, I love Django, and to see their moment when they come in together, where you have such, like, on one side of the coin is so dark and foreboding, right? Like, there's no sense of hope. And then you see this very whimsical German man pop up and go, dude, I'm going to buy your freedom. You're going to help me. But you also have the scene where, one, he killed one of the guys on the horse, right? And then the other guy, you know, he kills the horse and it breaks his leg. And he's trapped underneath it. But at the end, you know, when he's making that deal with Django, you know, and he looks at the other slaves and he's like, okay, you have two options. You can either free him, you know, walk I think it was like 20 miles in one direction while, you know, carrying this man, or, and this is the one I suggest, you take that rifle, kill him, and, you know, be on your merry way. Or, like, I think also take his clothes. But I
and
think
go north.
and go north. And he's like, oh, and that's the North Star, right? And I was like, oh shit, you know, he's telling him to go north. Well, by the way, also in that scene, when the slaves kill that guy, right? and the fountain of blood came up. I looked at Aaron and I went, "Oh, it's gonna be one of those kind of movies, isn't it?" I was like, "Oh no!" And I'm pretty sure for most of that, must have had like it looked like someone just having a bucket of blood and just throwing it upwards. Like I don't even know how they exploded that much blood up out of the person, but it was pretty intense, Tia.
To be fair, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie. He loves his blood. Yeah, so Christoph Waltz is an Austrian-German actor who was born in Vienna, Austria. I love Christoph Waltz. Obviously, for us in America, we were introduced to him in Inglourious Basterds, so that's an amazing role. This is an amazing role. He was in the recent James Bond movie. He is in that really great Quibi show that I told you about, The Most Dangerous Game. So I just love Christoph Waltz. And that is where, again, Quentin Tarantino's style of suspended belief comes in, right? You have the intro, and it's really grim and solemn. You know, you can feel the pain of the slaves who are being forced to walk naked, by the way. And I think it's probably cold because the other guys have big coats, you know, and
yeah, shivering really bad, and you could tell the frost on the ground.
Yeah, you know, forced to walk to another plantation. And then suddenly you have like this whimsical guy come out of nowhere with a freaking tooth that like on his carriage, just like swinging back and forth. And the way he talks, you know, is so like obviously much more educated than the slavers, we'll call them. So they're
they talk English. And
oh yeah,
like,
he said something
really proper English, my dude.
He was saying something and it was in English, and I speak English, and I was like, oh god.
I think also. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say Django. Whenever, which by the way, I remember all these years ago because I had never seen it right. And saying to Django, and somebody
The D
said
is silent.
D is silent, motherfucker, and I was like, what? What? But now I understand. Now I understand. But whenever like with Schultz says, you know, I suggest, you know, you grabbing the clothes off him, that dude's like, oh, you know, don't touch his clothes, right? Which he calls him, you know, a not so amazing word. And like Django walking over and just putting his foot down on the horse so it like
I
crushed.
love that.
I was like, man, I was like, he is like angry, he is ready to roll, like it was such like a good like freedom moment to be able to do that to your oppressor.
Well, the best scene in that moment there was him just shedding that dirty ass blanket over him, you know, just so like his shoulders like are back, you know, he's flinging that off, and it's like you know, he's going and getting his shit and everything. And I just love like the intro between them, you know, how Schultz like goes up and he's like, are you, you know, Django, are you this, that? And he's like, yeah, you know, and so then he tells him he needs his help finding the Brittle Brothers, as they're called, and that, you know, he gets the chain off his ankle, you know, blah, blah, like that's so good. And remember, Schultz tosses the key to the, you know, the shackles to the other slaves, you know, so that they can free themselves, and they all are having their moments of shedding their chains. And that's why the, you know, the movie is Django Unchained, you know. So that scene, like, I could like in this article that I will write, you know, of like the friendship between Schultz and Django was just so amazing, just even from the start, you know. And you have to remember, I forget if it's actually said in the movie, but or if like, you know, you kind of have this background information, it's like, you know, during this time in America they're slaves, right? And but why is this guy treating, you know, Django like an equal? You know, why is he so uncomfortable around slaves? You know, that's kind of like quote unquote America at that point. Well, he's German, he's not American, and in Europe they abolished slavery like so much before America did, you know? So to him, it's like that is an equal, you know? He's so like shocked when there's all this like mistreatment towards African Americans, and how, you know, people are even astonished that Django is on a horse, you know? So it's like that start just really showed you like who Schultz is, and Django too. His whole story, like to me, I was like, Django's whole story was just fabulous. It was amazing, and as you said, that intro was so great for both of them. And for us who were probably only used to Christoph Waltz beforehand being in Inglourious Basterds, seeing him go from a racist Nazi German to a nice German was like, oh, look at there.
Speaking of that, really quick, you know, I have such an affinity for short hair. But I was gonna say he was rocking that longer hair. He was compared to the two.
Of course, you noticed that. Of course, you noticed that. Brittany and I always have an argument of what constitutes long hair.
It's long-ish. Like to me, guy hair, right? Always being around short hair. If it is like past your ears as a dude, it's longer hair. It's long hair.
Long hair is like shoulders. That's long hair.
Dude, I didn't have like hair past my shoulders for years. It took years.
Well, I'm sorry that you have slow growing hair.
Hey, we can't be like Loki, right? And just pop on a fucking wig till I make that shit happen, okay?
My hair's so long right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Can you tie it on your legs?
No, I can't do that yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there. But yeah, I love the intro to Django Unchained and meeting Schultz and Django meeting Schultz. He's just such a whimsical character. I love it. I'm going to get number 7, and I'm going to stay within the realm of Django Unchained because it's such a small scene, but when I rewatched it the other day when Brittany got into it, I was like, yes, finally she but she actually watched this movie, because I went to go see it in the theaters, right? And I was like, oh, finally Brittany has seen it, so I'm going to rewatch it to kind of relive the moments, you know? Yeah. And I absolutely, so I know that there's going to be plenty of Schultz moments on your list. I'm not going to take any Schultz moments, but it's so it's when, you know, Django, it's at the very end, right? When Django goes back to Candyland so that he could, you know, retrieve his Broomhilda and, you know, destroy pretty much all of the racist bastards that live in Candyland, you know? And they're just coming back from Leonardo DiCaprio's character's funeral, you know? You got the whole brigade there and whatever. And so, you know how it's like, you know how there was that one woman who was dressed really fancy and she was always with Leo, even though she...
Yes.
Yeah. So you have her, and then you have one of, I guess, the head maids. You know, there's the two women, and, you know, they're walking up the stairs, and Miss Laura, who's Leonardo DiCaprio's character's sister, is like, oh, can you go get me some tea or something? And they're like, yes, Miss Laura. And they're walking up the stairs, but then you see Django there, and it's like, oh, God, you know, Django's back. Oh, and he's just like staying there, and I'm like ad-libbing here, you know, and I'm like going, but this is what I want to put on the scene. They're like, what does he say? He was like, all the black people can leave, you know, and he tells, but except Samuel L. Jackson's character, right? But he tells the two women, he goes, say goodbye, Miss Laura. And the one woman goes, goodbye, Miss Laura. And then Django just like blasts her away. And it was the funniest thing to me.
Oh my
Just
God.
like, just the sequence of it, like, say goodbye, Miss Laura. Goodbye, Miss Laura. Like, and I hate her too, because she also was like, a freaking stuck up little, African American hating racist bitch. I loved it. It was just the sequence of it, like her getting her just due, and then those two women being able to pretty much like run out. You saw like that one woman was booking it. I want to know what happened to them. Did they just keep running? Like, they should have joined Django and Broomhilda at least to go up north and pretty much. But yeah, so that little sequence, it's so small, but it has always stuck out to me. I'm going to say it one more time, all right? Say goodbye, Miss Laura. Goodbye, Miss Laura.
It's so funny. I was talking about this scene because, okay, all in all, I didn't. Let me preface this by saying I didn't like her either, right? Mm-hmm. But as one of these people in it that were awful, she was probably the least awful, right? Because she was the one that didn't want Broomhilda like undressed at the dinner, and all this stuff. But
I don't
she
think
got the most violent deaths out of everyone. Her brother.
Really quick, I don't think she didn't want Broomhilda undressed at the dinner table because of Broomhilda and, to respect her. It was more like, ew, don't, do that here at the dinner table. I felt that it came from a very, like, snobbish, stuck-up plane,
Yeah. Well, I just think, like, out of everyone that was racist and awful in the movie, she was probably the least, but she got the most violent, hilarious death. Because you think about her brother, right? He just got shot in the heart. Like, that's it. Like, little blood dribble out, right? Yeah. And you think about, like, the guy that got blasted in the head, or, the other brother killed. It's like, she got fucking, she had to put on a full harness and everything to fucking yank her back. Like, no joke.
It's still one of my favorite scenes. I'm sorry. Like, I just love, again, as I said, the sequence of it. I just think it's hilarious. And, I just didn't like her face. So I was okay. And she was...
Oh, no, I didn't like her either, especially her heart playing. I just thought it was funny that, like, out of, like, her brother just getting a little, like, pee hole in his heart compared to the sister who fucking just got blasted. I was like, okay.
I just think that, like, with her, even though, yes, she wasn't so outlandishly, say, racist, she wasn't, she wasn't Leo, she wasn't, Big Daddy or anything, but it's like, you could tell she had... You could tell she has such like this elitist mentality, because even when she was bringing Broomhilda to Schultz, she like just the things that she was saying were very like yes, and then I don't know if you
annoying.
What'd you say?
I want to say she's definitely annoying.
And I think she even was trying to suggest to Schultz that they like could spend time together, and then Schultz slammed the door in her face.
No, that part was hilarious because you could tell, like I had a full-on argument, by the way, like not a full-on argument, like, but a choking argument over, like Leonardo character with the sister. I was like, there's some weird like
they're
chemistry.
Definitely fucking.
Yeah, and he was like, no, they're just like very brotherly, and I was like, I have never kissed any of my siblings on the mouth like that. That's very.
I don't have siblings, but I know that that's not right. He's like, where's my beautiful sister? And I'm like, and then he's like all close to her, and he said like kiss her, and I'm like, no. And we never see Leonardo DiCaprio's character with anyone, right? He's unmarried.
That one girl though, the fancy dressed one.
Yeah, but she was probably more of a sexual, like, conquest thingy, you know? Like, I there's definitely, like, things to say there, you know, because they kind of, like, touched upon something like that even in, like, say, 12 Years a Slave. But it's like, even though they are treated better in the sense of going to the fancy dinners, wearing the dresses, they're still not free. They're still never going to be the wife. They probably, you know, it's more of like a survival thing. Like, she probably's like, you know, I'd rather be eating the fancy dinners and cocktail shrimp than freaking, you know, being in even Broomhilda's position, right? But in that sense, that doesn't mean that, like, Leonardo DiCaprio's character wasn't also fucking his sister. He was definitely fucking that really beautiful one, but he was also fucking his sister.
No, and that's what I was saying. Like, I'm not saying like that was a good thing. I was just saying that like he isn't so obsessed with his sister that he's not sleeping with anyone else. But
Right.
which I always feel like I have to like preface this by saying I'm not defending these people. I'm just like touching on parts of the story to go like further into it. Because one thing I'll say is like you can definitely tell that the one girl that was like had it much better than the others was so irritable because I think she was gonna have her like go fix tea, and you could tell that she's not had to do that before, and she was very pissed off about it. And I was like, oh no, like she's already like mad as hell about it.
Oh man, yeah, no, that could be a whole nother, like, discussion to explore. But so that's gonna be my number 7 is the say goodbye, Miss Laura. But Brittany, what's your number 6?
I'm It's funny, like I know I'm gonna have so many Django scenes on here, so don't judge me, okay? Okay,
I
girl?
won't. I won't. I won't.
I'm gonna go with the Big Daddy scene because so much goes into it, and also when they were like calling him Big Daddy, I was like, my kink, but not my kink, all wrapped up in a big no package, by the way.
So
But
which Big Daddy scene? His, like, intro on his plantation, or the white cloth scene?
oh, not the white cloth one, because I thought that was gonna be on yours. But no, the intro when they ride up, right? Which I have to lead into. I love that Django, like, because Schultz had already explained to Django, like, you're gonna play a part, right? And you know the part where he's like, oh, you're gonna let me pick out my own outfit, and he's like, well, of course. And I love that Django chooses that like bright blue outfit that you can obviously tell is very fancy, right? And like I love that like Django has such an air for the theatrics. But like when they pull up, right, and like Big Daddy's like, oh, I don't want him on a horse on this property, which, you know, other words are used for that. But saying how he doesn't want him on a horse, and he's like, not on my plantation. And they're like, oh, well, he's, you know, a free man. And he's like, I don't care. Well, the part, like, whenever Schultz brings up about the money, and this Colonel Sanders looking mofo just
Oh my god, he did look like that.
slowly smiles, and he's like, oh, well, why didn't you? Like, okay, from being from the South, right? Like my neck of the woods isn't like the Southern Belle, like very like because where's this at? Is this in like Georgia, I think, at this point, you know, or Alabama? I can't remember. One of the very, oh, well, why didn't you say so? Why don't you come off that horse? And, you know, very talking like teabag from freaking
Prison
oh,
break.
yes, from Prison Break. Like instantly like cool and collected, you know, very like went from didn't even want a black man on a horse on his plantation to suddenly like, oh, treating Django, you know, like, oh, and like we talked about that one scene where she's like, the girl isn't quite understanding what he means by how to treat him, and he's like trying to like find the words for it, but I don't know, that whole scene is so good because I love the flip, but also getting to see Django in his outfit and so excited to play this part and so unwavering. Yeah, I'm telling you, if I was in that situation where somebody was like, I don't want you on a horse, my ass would be sliding off that horse. I'd be terrified as shit.
So really quick, the movie takes place in like several places. So the beginning of the movie is in Texas. Big Daddy's plantation is in Tennessee, and Leonardo DiCaprio's thing is in Mississippi. So Big Daddy is Tennessee, and yes, he definitely looks like Colonel Sanders. Like that is the funniest shit. No, as you said, I love that because as he is so like, I don't give a shit if this guy is free. He does not belong on a horse in my property. Is disrespectful. X, Y, and Z. And then finally, Schultz says dollar bills, and Big Daddy's like, oh well, shit. Why didn't you just say? With as you said that like. Was it that corn fried molasses, chicken fried?
Like, what's like the mill version of a Southern Belle? Like, and it's funny. Like, I just like a note on it just because I found it interesting. It's so interesting to see in this point of view. Is when I had to do that big paper about like racism in the South, right? And like the differences, a big thing was that a lot of people in the South that were owning these plantations basically thought they were like they thought that they were descended. I didn't know all this shit, by the way, that they thought they were like descended from the people that had basically founded England, and while everybody else was like Anglo-Saxon heathens, like French German descent, and that they weren't as wise as them. Like it's you already have like that white supremacy there, right? But like double layered, where they thought that they were like a better breed than like say northern people, that they thought that they were all just like Anglo-Saxon people. And I didn't really notice, like I didn't know about that or really pinpoint it until you see someone like Big Daddy who speaks in that like different like aristocratic voice, who thinks that he's so much better, which is so funny because now that you see things turn, it don't exactly seem that way anymore.
Well, so two things. You definitely have this case in Django Unchained where all of these plantation owners certainly have this false image of themselves where they are a higher class than they actually are. Because as you said, you have Big Daddy who has this massive plantation and speaks very, aristocratically, for lack of better words, but then you have, say, someone like Leonardo DiCaprio's character who insists on being called Monsieur Candy, and when Schultz says something in French, like, oh well, don't speak in French. He can't speak French. You'll insult him, and it's like, so he wants the illusion because in his mind, perhaps, being French is very, sophisticated, but he doesn't actually know French. It's like, it's very like putting gold on a turd, pretty much, it's still a turd, but you just put gold on it. But, I do like in that scene, Django. I think Django did it like that blue suit because it's like, first of all, he gets the choice of picking out his own clothes, which is such like a minute but like really powerful scene as well. Because I always felt like, to me, Schultz was never like giving permission to Django to do things. It wasn't like, Schultz was like, here, I give you permission. It's like he was pretty much like taking away the layers of oppression to show Django, like, you're your own person. Like, you do whatever you want. And I think that Django just wanted that to make like the loudest statement possible. Not only is Django a black person on a horse going into a slave owner's plantation, he is wearing the brightest blue suit ever. He doesn't wear something like that throughout the movie. It's that one scene because I think that was his scene to show like, yeah, mother effer, like, deal with it. And I know you want to say something, but really quick, I certainly love though when that one girl is like, "Wait, so you purposely dressed this way?"
Right, right. You know, what I liked about that scene, like with him getting like the outfit, is one, he says, oh, you're gonna let me pick my own outfit, and he's like, well, of course, blah blah blah. That outfit had to cost out the ass, by the way. You think about like back then and like the quality of it and how roughly it was. Like that was his way of being like, like, and also good on Schultz to not be like, oh, it has to be within a certain price range. It has to be like this. He's like, no, it's like basically like, hey, do what you do, you broski, you do you. And it was nice that it wasn't like one better than the other. It was basically like Schultz giving him his independence to be like, hey, bro, we're equals. Just pick your shit. Just pick your shit.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just felt like Schultz, to him, it was like a no-brainer,
Yeah.
But I just like that. I love the Big Daddy plantation scene, just because you're like, what? I'm from the north, which it's like, come on, south, to get some factories down there. You wouldn't need all these slaves, but there's people obviously out there who I think just want to feel superior to others, because to me it's like, I was talking to Polly about, and I was like, I just don't understand any of this, like treating another human being like that. They're a human being, but to them, they weren't, right? And, for us who live in the North, New York and stuff, prior to meeting you, that was our mindset of the South. Like, it's like, oh look, big plantation owners. Like, I remember really quick, there was this one time where my mom and I were watching like 4 Weddings on TLC, and this one girl was from Tennessee or one of those, and her freaking theme of her wedding was cotton. I was like, of course this motherfucker's theme is cotton. Like, are you kidding me? She was like, I just love cotton, It's like, I just feel like there was like undertones there, right? Or we one time watched this show where it's like, Who Do You Think You Are? The show where they like go into celebrities' pasts and they try and find like, their ancestors and everything. And there's that one, what is she, like a country singer? She's also acted Reva or something. And, they like looked in her history, and I guess she didn't like know who like maybe her great grandparents were on like either side. And they revealed that like one of them were slave owners, and she was like, oh my God. And again, my mom and I were like, you from the South, lady? Of course your ancestors were slave owners. Like, don't be so shocked.
It's crazy because, having grown up, it's like that was not at all a way I was raised. It was like that dark history, right, of a place that you're raised. Well, it was one thing that I didn't really, to me, I was like, oh, the southern states, yeah, they have such a history with it, but not quite seeing the history of Arkansas with it. But like, what's terrifying is one, when I was looking for a wedding venue, this lady was like, oh yeah, this used to be a plantation. It's probably still haunted by the ghost of this one guy. And I was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. I was like, okay, that's terrifying. Goodbye, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then like there is a courthouse, right, that's said to be haunted because it was a white woman had claimed that a black man had done something to her and they lynched him outside of the courthouse. And of course, the lady was lying. But like just hearing those parts of history and going, man, it's not so in your face, but when you look back in the past and go, oh yeah, a lot of terrible shit happened. It's just like kind of tucked out of view.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the history, when you look deeper into it, is just so appalling. And as someone who, like, I live in New York. It's such a melting pot, right? And especially the areas I live in. I don't live in Upper Westchester. I don't live in, like, Upper New York or something like that. I very much live in, you know, Lower Westchester, New York. There's a lot of people of different races, which I think is amazing. It definitely makes you more cultured to know, like, different people. But it's just like coming from someone living like that, it's just like I could never imagine like a life where you treated people less than because they were like a different race than you, and especially like to the level that you see in like this movie, you see in history. It's like, oh my God. It's just like, thank God we're past that, because obviously there's a shit ton of racist people still out there. I don't think that you could ever get rid of racist people, but the fact that like slaves were even a thing just is like mind-boggling. So Django Unchained, certainly, I think, I'm not a person of color or anything like that. I'm not an African American, but to me, it was just so great seeing someone who was a former slave in the movie, like, gain such independence and, like, kick a lot of ass. And as he even said, he was like, oh, get paid to kill a bunch of white people? Psh, where do I sign up? So I love that.
Right. I love that. Like, like, the only thing I'll say on it is, like, I didn't see it in theater, but my mom saw it in theater, and she always said that she's like, everybody was fucking cheering throughout the movie. Like, she said it was loud.
You know what? Good, because that was like, even for me as a white woman, that shit felt so good even watching it. So yeah, I love your number 6. And as I said, I think Django Unchained is one of Quentin Tarantino's best movies. So I'm going to get number 5. Let's see.
I like
what
that
should
long drawn out.
Well, because it's like, you said you were going to have a lot of Schultz. So I'm like, is this Inglourious Bastard scene going to be on your list?
I've gotten all my Schultz out.
Okay, so I'm going to pick... I have like a long list here that I'm like, God damn it. All right, so I'm going to do actually something from the Hateful Eight. I was trying to like get in one from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just to show that I don't like hate it that much, but I'm like, I can't think of any scenes right now. Maybe in the honorable mentions. But so my scene in the Hateful Eight, I'm like trying to write it down because I always like write down those things, right? So I'm like trying to like write it really quick. Hang on. Sorry, everyone. In suspense. So I don't remember his character's name, but Samuel Jackson in The Hateful Eight. When you find out that he killed that one, like, what is the old guy? Like his, like a former colonel for like the Confederacy or something. And you find out that not only did Samuel Jackson's character kill that guy's son, but he made him like suck his dick too. I don't know why. When that happened, I was like, I can't believe that I'm watching this right now. Like, I remember I was like, wait, he really did that? Because you could tell like there was such a thing with that old guy that, he obviously was like a former head honcho in the Confederate Army, so he already didn't like Samuel Jackson because of the color of his skin, but also because Samuel Jackson's character was a big deal in the Civil War. He killed a lot of people, he did a lot of things, so he already was kind of looked at funny by a lot of people in the movie. And for him to just be so like, hey, old man motherfucker, and Walton Goggins is in that movie as well. I remember he's like, you be respectful of him, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, let me talk about how I killed your son and made him go down on me before I killed him and made him trek in the snow naked. And I'm like, oh, wow, you really went in on this. So I love that scene. It's so small.
Like, so, like, where you're just like, oh, fuck. Like, this is bad.
I know. So I just really like that scene. Again, I know that it's so minute and so tiny, but the reveal of it and how, Samuel L. Jackson's character is just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to tell you who I am, even though it's probably going to cause tension within the cabin that we're all stuck in. But yeah, so I really like that scene. What do you think, Brittany?
I was gonna say that movie was like. Let me start with how the movie was as a whole, which I need to rewatch it because there is a guy that looks like Christoph Waltz in it, but I really liked his personality in it, even though he
Yeah.
turns out to be like evil. But that movie was intense. Like, okay, tell me you did not feel sorry for the girl at first getting like constantly the shit beat out of her the entire movie. I was like, golly, I was like, that's a lot. And then you realize, she's pretty evil herself, so I don't quite feel as bad. But that movie was intense. Like, it was one thing after another. And I love movies like that, like where because it all takes place in the cabin, right? Like most of
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I love it when they do that with movies because I feel like there's not so much filler. Like you can't just have a 10-minute like sorry, like a Lord of the Rings moment of like walking and nothing happening. But it's like constantly something and you get to know so much more about these characters as you go, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like that scene when it happened, like it's hilarious in a way, but God, it made me so like sickly uncomfortable. Like you know how I get when I feel trapped and I just want to like leave. That whole entire scene of like the slow realization on the colonel or the general's face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like this slow like disgust and like fucking like Samuel L. Jackson just going fucking in like just like so descriptive and disgusting. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here, Tia.
He was laughing so maniacally, and it was so great. As you said, I like the fact that the majority of the film took place in one like space because that already causes tension, and you could feel that throughout the movie. And I know the guy that you said, because he could very well have been played by Christoph Waltz. Like I was surprised that he wasn't because it just would have been hilarious. But that guy, I don't know the actor's name, but he played a key part in Reservoir Dogs as well. So, yeah, that actor has also been in a few Quentin Tarantino movies. But yeah, as you said, like he's just so gleeful. Like Samuel Jackson's so gleeful while describing the horrific torture that he put this one guy's son through. But I was laughing. Like I know I should. That's the thing. It's like I laugh through so much of Quentin Tarantino's movies that are probably not like laugh-worthy scenes, but the way that he just presents them is just hilarious to me. I'm like,
Very
this is insane.
comical. Like it
Yeah.
forces you to laugh at uncomfortable scenes that you
Mhm.
shouldn't like quite find so funny. But like one thing that gets me really quick, like this is like my little ode to Samuel L. Jackson. Oh no, I have like hiccups, so give me like 1 second if I sound weird. I think they're gone. Um, but by the way, Samuel L. Jackson is such a freaking badass that I didn't realize really quick because I've been on such a Star Wars thing. There was no purple lightsabers before Samuel L. Jackson. He literally said, I want a purple lightsaber. And George Lucas went, okay. And they wrote it in. They wrote it in, Tia, that apparently like a purple lightsaber means like that you've tapped slightly into the dark side, right?
Yeah.
Like that you have that little bit of influence. And that BMF is carved on the side of his lightsaber because I was getting all these factoids while playing the Star Wars game. For bad motherfucker is on that lightsaber, and that Samuel L. Jackson kept the lightsaber and likes to show it off when he goes to Star Wars convention shit. Like Star Wars a bit. What kind of shit is that? What kind of shit is Samuel L. Jackson? So, and like his stare scares the absolute shit out of me. Can we talk about that? Like, have you seen those gifs of him from that one movie, right? Where he plays like an evil character and the fucking stare on the porch? He strikes fear into me.
He has been in everything, like Star Wars, Marvel, this, that, this. Like, he has just been in everything. He was in the Die Hard movies. Like, he is such a staple in modern day cinema that, like, I think like his filmography must have like 300 like movies in it. I'm pretty sure. I don't know how he gets the time for it, but he does. But yeah. Um fucking Samuel Jackson. But no. So that's gonna be my number 5 is the dick sucking scene in Hateful Eight. Brittany, what is your number 4?
Oh, well, I don't know how to like follow that up. Oh God. I'm gonna go with the shoe scene from Inglourious Bastards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna have to help me out here because I love the scene, but like I said, it's been so long since I've seen it in its entirety. But we talked about how which I think was she a French actress? I think 'cause that was like the big deal with her playing. Like it was like they considered her a traitor, or like she was Austrian. I don't know. She wasn't
She
quite
was
German.
she was a German actress who was working for the English as a covert ops spy
Okay.
for the English.
Okay. Well, like, sorry. Want to give you 5 There we go. Hello, Toby. I'm legitimately talking to you on this podcast to our viewers, and Toby's like, "Let me step on your face, please." Like, let me step on your whole entire face. Um, but that scene is so good because like we said, she loses her shoe, and and when you look back, you can tell like, yeah, she definitely lost that shoe, right? But by the way, is his name Hans Landa? Like
Yeah.
Landa? Okay, I'm making sure I was saying that correctly. Hans Landa, where you already feel like something's bad because you have Brad Pitt with his awful Italian accent, right? And she's like, "Don't worry, Germans don't speak Italian, right?" Like that's not something they really do, because you also like looking back with all the history should have had to do. The Germans very much looked down on the Italians. Sorry, Tia. But just looking back on it and everything, like with Brad Pitt's character having to speak like Italian, and what's he go buongiorno or grazie, and I was like, what? Which Tia, as an Italian, how'd that scene feel for you, buddy? Like, how'd you like that pronunciation?
To me,
I
it
can't even
was
pronounce it.
so hilarious because he was like, "I speak the most Italian," and as soon as he's like, Italian, I was like, "It's not gonna be good." And then you have Hans Landa like flawlessly speaking Italian, and they're like, "Buongiorno," and I was like, "Yeah, it pretty much sounds like." That pretty much sounds like anyone beginning to try to learn a language.
Right, right. And like, and as we've seen, which I have another scene later on, that's going to be my last one, which, but Hans Landa is not an idiot, right? He is so incredibly smart. What I think is so terrifying about him is that he even says himself that he doesn't care about the Nazi agenda. He just likes hunting people. And that's terrifying. You know what I mean? Like, he legitimately says, like, "Oh, I don't care about, this whole, like, this racial superiority thing that they've got going on. I don't care about that. I just like hunting people." And I don't know why that is more terrifying to me, because there's not, like, some twisted ideal to it. There's no,
There's no
like,
rhyme or reason.
yeah, he just enjoys the hunt. And that's terrifying. Because you even see, like, later on when he, like, works with the Americans and stuff. You know, he doesn't have much reason to do that except save his own skin, right? But
Yeah.
like going back to everything else with the shoe scene is when he like has her like he's like, you know, he brings her to the office and he slowly puts the shoe on the desk and she's just looking at it and he's like, oh, you know, this look, I can't remember the entire scene, but basically he's like, oh, it looks like it would fit, right? And she's like, oh, no, 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 you know, blah, blah, blah. And he's like puts her foot in his lap, right? And he's like, he wants to see if it fits and he's so calm, he's so happy and slowly slipping that shoe on and he goes, ah, a perfect fit. And you like sit there and he just fucking starts choking her like instantly, like just instantly comes across there at her, chokes her, and I'm like, is this how she's gonna die? And he kills her that scene, right? He chokes her to death.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's just like back to normal, back to happy-go-lucky. But that's another scene where it's like, you would think that he would want to turn her in, right? Like, oh, you know, look, you know, blah, 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 there's so much going on. No, he just wanted to kill her. And that's kind of fucking terrifying. By the way, they allude to, I don't know if this was just a fan theory, that Hans Landa does have like a foot thing. And that's kind of terrifying. Why does people with foot fetishes terrify me? I don't know
Because
why.
they're all serial killers.
I'm over here about to go, I don't want to kink shame. And Tia's like, all people with foot fetishes are serial killers. You know what? I'm going to get that tattooed on me, Tia. Thank you. I'm going to get you a shirt that says, people who like have a foot fetish are serial killers. There you go, Tia.
No, I feel like that. All right, really quick side note. I feel like that's my thing lately, saying something like that, because you know that show, My Strange Addiction?
Yes.
I've been watching that recently, and there was one where this guy was 31, and him saying that he has an addiction to dating older women, but not like 40s or 50s, like 70s or 80s, right? And just the way that he was talking, I was like, this guy's a serial killer. I'm like, he's definitely dating these women and then killing them and keeping them in like a freezer in his basement. I was like, I'm convinced, because he's like, I date a lot of women, you know, I'm always, and that's literally how he talked. I'm always, you know, just online, and oh, she has a beautiful smile, and I'm like, you're definitely like killing them. Like, you're definitely killing them, and you're figuring no one would notice. Like, that's been my thing. Like, I don't know, watching that, I was like, this guy's a serial killer. I have that feeling coming from him. So, yeah.
Picture for Facebook where like this really old man had just married this like much younger woman, which you would be like, oh, that's fine. But I mean, she was like early 20s and he was like 90s old, like hella old. And she's like, I can't wait to spend the rest of his life together. Like, his life was the title. I was like, oh no. Like, I'm sure it was doctored that way, but golly, I sat there, I was like, oh no. But yeah, Hans Landa, like, if he has a foot thing, I'm like, to me, I'm not even surprised here. I'm just like, yeah, he sounds about fucking scary enough to have a foot fetish. But, like, I don't know what it is about that scene, but I think it's like, Hans Landa has this way of being like so slow and scary, and that's why like I always have to like. This is my thing. Django is the star of Django Unchained, like no doubt. But I have such an obsession with Christoph Waltz that I end up like any like show any movie he's in, I just obsess over. Like I have a problem, Tia. Please help me.
I'm telling you, get the free trial of Quibi, right? Because it's literally still in the 90-day free trial of Quibi. Watch Most Dangerous Game. It's 13 episodes long. They literally are all 8 minutes long. Okay? So it's not like you have to sit down for 13 hours. it's literally like 1 hour that you could just watch as a continuous movie. He's so good in it. Like, he was such a star. Like, I loved Liam Hemsworth in it, but certainly Christoph Waltz was the shining star.
I love him. I can't help it, Tia. But
But
yeah, the shoe scene was amazing. How did you feel about it, though?
yeah, I feel like, so it's funny because we talked about how he said that he really doesn't have any sort of hatred towards Jewish people, that he just likes hunting and this is kind of an excuse for him. But I also think there's that bit of German nationalism there in that moment, because it's like, as you said, he could have turned her in. And we do see that he knows of the bombs that are being placed in that movie theater, and he allows for it to happen because it serves his self-interest, right? But he kills her regardless. And I feel like there was almost that bit of, German nationalism there, because it's like, she's a German actress, but betrayed Germany to work with England, So I feel like there was that bit of that in him, that because he was so rageful. You'd never really see him so angry, and he was so angry.
He was.
Yeah, he was so angry, and I feel like if it's a combination of this like German nationalism that he had, and also maybe he liked her, and I don't know, but that scene was terrifying. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna touch upon like what always terrified me on the psychology standpoint of like watching so much like murder shit as a kid, of like the true crimes and blah blah blah, is they say that strangulation is one of the most intimate ways to kill someone, because they like the person enjoys looking into their eyes as they like die. And for him to do that to her, I almost feel like there is that little bit of like, yeah, that fucked upness there, because we've seen that, we alluded to, right, from like even the beginning scene, like that the way, he's not afraid to use a gun, but there is something way different between like fully strangling someone and watching them die. Like that fucked up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I felt with that scene. I mean, it was just terrifying because it really just goes to show you that Hans was in the ultimate control of everything, right? That nothing could get past him. He knew right away. And it's like her whole hiking story just didn't hold up at all. It was like almost pathetic that she thought something like that was going to make it past anyone, let alone Hans. And he just like how firm he was in put your foot right here, oh look, it's a perfect fit. Yeah,
like he's so playful.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And again, that like he was so good in that movie. Like, to me, Inglourious Basterds as a whole was just what I would say, in my personal opinion. I'm sure people would disagree to some extent, but my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies are Inglourious Basterds, Django Unchained, and Reservoir Dogs, right? And again, Hateful Eight is great. Pulp Fiction is a classic. The Kill Bills, Jackie Brown, even, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood had its good moments, even though I wasn't, say, the biggest fan of it. But it's like, to me, I love those three movies that I just said. So Inglourious Basterds, is really like an ensemble cast to me. I felt like there really wasn't any particular person, even though, of course, Brad Pitt, you could say, was a big one. But to me, I focused on everyone, Michael Fassbender's character, freaking the whole Inglourious Basterds as a team, the Shoshana, right? It's like there were so many who were so big in the movie that it's really an ensemble cast. But yeah, that scene with the German actress was like, oh, you knew she was gonna die. You're like, she ain't making it past this.
Right? Like, you have that moment, like, Quentin Tarantino don't mess around. When you think somebody's dead, they're probably dead.
Yeah, 100%. I just love that scene. I love Inglourious Basterds, and I love Hans Landa. So excellent choice with your number 4. I'm going to hit the number 3, and I'm going to do a Reservoir Dog scene because I feel like this is one of the best scenes, one of the most iconic scenes. It actually is also like parodied. I don't know if that's a word, right? Like there was a Bob's Burgers episode that like did a similar scene to this.
Oh no, I know what you're gonna say. Continue, but I'm like, oh no.
So it's the ear cutoff scene. So in the movie, right? God, I think his name is like Mr. Brown or something. It's been a long time since I've seen it, right? So I don't necessarily like remember the names or even, any of that shit, but freaking. So the whole thing, as I said before, with the whole thing with Reservoir Dogs, it's all these people being brought in to do a heist together. Well, the thing is that one of the, actually the guy who in Hateful Eight, who you said could have possibly been played by Christoph Waltz, he is an undercover cop, right?
Oh,
in this whole thing. So, and his name is Mr. Orange, right? And Mr. Orange is the undercover cop. So the heist, which should have gone perfectly, goes terribly. So pretty much like some of the members of the group are killed, others are pretty much like scattered in the wind, right? Like Mr. Pink is scattered, blah, blah, blah. So you have Mr. Blonde, who is pretty much like regarded as he's like a psychopath. And he at some point captures a cop. Not Mr. Orange, because none of them know at this point. They know that there was a mole, but they don't know that it was Mr. Orange, right? But Mr. Blonde catches a uniformed cop, and he's keeping him in this warehouse, and he tells one of the other guys, the other guy who he says is actually the son of the person who brought everyone together. He's like, I'm just going to get my information out of this guy. And so the son is like, well, he is a cop. Like, don't do anything too crazy. I got to figure all this out. And he leaves. And that just leaves Mr. Blonde with the cop. And the cop is like, well, you heard him. And Mr. Blonde just puts on this music, right? This iconic music. And he's dancing, he's kind of like enjoying himself. And he takes out this fucking knife. And he literally cuts the cop's ear off, and then afterwards talks into it and literally talks into the ear. He was like, huh? What? And it's so fucked up. And when I say that there's a Bob's Burgers episode like that, there's a Bob's Burgers episode where there's this food critic who throughout the episode chaos ensues, and Bob and other restaurant owners end up like in this guy's house and tying him up, but like Bob is obviously like, oh my god, what are we doing? And one of the other restaurant owners who had been pretty much like shut down due to this food critic's negative review is like, just let me do something to him. And they're like, fine. And he goes to give him a wet willy, but the music plays, he's dancing exactly like, thing. But yeah, in Reservoir Dogs, it's obviously much bloodier because he literally cuts the guy's ear off, and I believe he ends up setting that guy on fire too. He's pretty fucked up in it.
Oh no! So, yeah. I was like, I didn't watch Reservoir Dogs, and now my brain goes, oh no, no.
There's so much in Reservoir Dogs. It's so bloody because Mr. Orange ends up getting hurt at some point, and he's in like the backseat of the car, and he's like, I'm dying. And freaking there's at some point where they're in the warehouse, and this other guy who ended up becoming friendly with Mr. Orange, who doesn't know that he is a Mr. White. That's right. Mr. White doesn't know that Mr. Orange is an undercover cop, and Mr. White is essentially consoling him in this warehouse as Mr. Orange is dying. And Mr. White is like, I just don't understand, how everything went wrong. And finally, Mr. Orange reveals that it was him. He's the mole. And all of a sudden, you just see Mr. White taking a gun to Mr. Orange's head and pulling the trigger.
Well,
yeah.
I'm depressed.
Mr. Pink. Mr. Pink, though, lives.
Liz? I mean, maybe good karma family came to him because he tipped the waitress to you. Maybe she was like, maybe it was like American Gods, and the diner waitress was a fucking like what, a Hindu goddess that fucking gave him good karma.
But yeah, so my original scene though, sorry, is the cutting of the ear off. So what do you think about that, Brittany?
I feel like I've seen that scene play out, right? Like in other media where I was like, well, that was disconcerting and like totally random. Like I didn't need that in my life. And it is definitely one of those things that you go, I feel like that's from something, like parroting something, right? Because I had seen that scene happen in Bob's Burger, and I had seen it happen in Family Guy, and I think something else I'm trying to remember, like even a children's show, because apparently, you gotta do it for the adults sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But there is something so creepy about someone so gleeful about doing something to you and putting on the music and kind of dance and kind of getting into that mindset, and just like the dude tied up, because that dude had to be like, what the fuck? Like, one, okay, the music, right? Two, you're doing this weird dance at me. Oh, and now you cut my ear off. Okay. And by the way, being set on fire is one of my like biggest fears. Like, yeah, that's a pretty like, understandable fear, but like seeing it in movies where the person's caught on fire, I would not be cool with it. Like I would probably have to skip through that scene in the movie.
Yeah, no, it was pretty gruesome, definitely. They don't like exactly show the ear getting cut off. The camera kind of pans away as you hear him scream, but then like the ear is in Mr. Blonde's hand, and as I said, he like talks into it, and to me that's like the creepiest part, that he's just like, huh, what? And it's just, oh man, Mr. Blonde is definitely a psychopath, and they allude to that throughout the whole entire movie. Like even at some point when Mr. Blonde, because Mr. Blonde is the only one who's like done a job for these guys before, and also like knows them before all this. And even when he's being brought in, there's like a question like, oh, why would you, like the son asked the dad, like, why are you bringing him in? He's a fucking crazy person. And you find out it's because the last job that he was on, I think also got botched, but not in such an extreme way. But he like didn't reveal any names, and he just went to jail for like 10 years or something. So the dad is like, he was like, that's one loyal person, he could have had the opportunity to say names and he didn't, so that's why he brought him on to this job. But it's like, oh God, that poor cop, like the torture that he has to be put through, so bad.
I like how Quentin Tarantino will like literally do buckets upon buckets of bloody scenes, but cuts away at getting the ear cut off. Okay, I see you.
Well, I think more so that the whole thing was supposed to be like, it's more terrifying your imagination, because all you hear are screams. So if you don't have that visual, it's like your mind has to come up with it itself. Know what I'm saying?
It's gonna be a no from me, dog.
But yeah, so that is my number 3. And Brittany, I certainly want to know what your number 2 is. I feel like I know what it is, and it's a reason why I didn't put it on my list, because I was like, as soon as you're like, oh, I'm done with the Schultz, and I was like, okay, then she has to be using this one scene. If you don't use it, we're gonna have problems. No.
Oh, please don't hurt me. I was gonna go with the French scene, the very beginning scene of Inglourious Bastards.
That's
That
actually
is
not what
like,
I thought you would use, but okay.
oh no! Now I'm curious to know what you thought it was gonna be.
I thought it was gonna be the creme scene.
Well, that is the scene. Oh no, that's not the scene. Never mind. Different scene. I almost did that one. I'm glad you reminded me. I was trying to figure out, my phone had auto-corrected cream to center, and I was like, what was I put there? What was I gonna put there? And so I erased it, and I didn't remember what I was gonna put. So you've reminded me now. But I'm gonna go with the beginning scene of Inglourious Bastards, because one, that scene has been so like, it's another scene that's been parodied a lot. Parodied? I don't know how to say that correctly. Uh with the scene is, one, you have, you're alluding to the fact that from the beginning, which you kind of get the understanding, well, that there is a French farmer. I think he's a dairy farmer, right? Who he lives a simple life. He doesn't look like he has a wife. I think it's just him and his daughters, right?
Right.
Lives a simple life, but he's hiding Jewish people, because we know at this point that France has been occupied by Germany, and that their Jews are starting to be hunted. And so you can tell that he's hiding like an entire family. He's a good man, right? He's trying to do the right thing, and by hiding these people, but as Hans Landa says, he's very good at hunting people. And he's heard that, that a French family was able to escape. He comes there and everything, and they usher the daughters outside. Well, I think even he's like, oh, he offers him milk, right? Because it's a big thing, was that he was a dairy farmer. Because it's been a while since I've seen this scene, and them doing this interaction, and you have such a sense of dread. Like, I remember being like, because remember when I originally watched this movie, I thought it was like a halfway comedy, because I had never seen a Quentin Tarantino film. And I was like, oh, I've seen some funny scenes, I've seen a clip here or there, and it was something kind of humorous. And, the names is Inglourious Bastards. And, you always hear the buongiorno shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that slow, like, when he was like, oh, do you speak English? And he's like, yes. And he's like, basically like wondering if anybody else knows how to speak English. And he's like, no. And so they start speaking English. And just the upsetness that this Frenchman has, because he doesn't want to give up these people, right? You have to think about that inner struggle at the time. But he does have his 3 young daughters. And he's like trying to think, Hans Landa is promising, hey, just give them up, you won't be harmed, your daughters, blah, blah, blah. Well, the scene whenever, like, he tells the man, like, oh, he calls in his daughters, right? Because he's calling in his soldiers so that these people won't be that they won't understand that people are coming in, and they start shooting through the flooring. Well, that's when, you're first introduced to Shoshana, who's the only survivor. And it's so sad, because when she comes out from under her house, she's covered in her family's blood. Like, that is traumatic in its own. But I always am still curious why it's kind of like that fucked up huntingness from Hans Landa too. Whenever he could have shot Shoshana, I'm still like very much on that. Like, everybody's always like, oh, she was out of his, like, he couldn't. But he was always like, what does he say? He says like a way of saying goodbye, Shoshana. But
Au
like,
revoir, Shoshana.
like, he's so creepy. And he's so creepy in the sense that he's so joyful about what he does. And I think that's what Christoph Waltz brings to a lot of stuff he plays in, is he's always playful, but he can be serious. And he's so good at swapping between, like, you can definitely see why Quentin Tarantino wants him always in his films, because he's in a lot of his shit, isn't he? Like, almost all the time. But
He's
But to see
actually
that,
only been in 2 of Quentin's movies.
I thought he was in way more because I know Quentin Tarantino is obsessed with, I almost called him Hans Landa, but obsessed with Christoph Waltz. But that scene, like, I still, like, I know a lot of people were like, oh, she was out of his sight, and I'm like it was too far. No, because you see him, like, hesitate. I think it's almost like he wanted to let her go just so he could hunt her down again. And to me, that's, like, fucking terrifying. But the setup switching between French and English, right, was, like, terrifying. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, he totally could have gotten her. He purposely did that so that to kind of like have that sense of dread, because now she's always going to be running, when I think this is a perfect scene to pick, right? And my thing is that the way this movie started was so beautiful, with Hans Landa coming to this French farmer's farm, and asking him, oh, can I have a glass of milk? You're a dairy farmer. And the fact that, he wanted to switch from French to English. And it's like, I didn't know at first what was going on really until they like panned the camera down underneath the floorboards and you saw the family. I'm like, oh, he's hiding them. But it's like Hans knew the whole time. And my thing is that there's the little details, right? If you remember, the Frenchman goes, oh, can I smoke my pipe, right? He goes, yeah. The Frenchman takes out his pipe. Then Hans Landa takes out his pipe, which is a much bigger pipe, and I feel like there was supposed to be something there, like not like comparing dick sizes. Huh?
Did you feel like he was overcompensating?
No, see, that's the thing. I didn't think that it was supposed to be like a dick thing, right? I think it was supposed to be more of like, ha, I'm better than you. Like in all senses. Like, I'm the big bad Nazi German and my pipe is even bigger than yours. Like, I felt like it was that almost. And I guess you could say, then yes, then it kind of turns into a dick measuring contest. But I just think it's a little more poetic than that, a lot less crude. But that whole scene was so terrifying. I remember seeing that for the first time. My heart was like going, right? Hans was so in control of that. And he's comparing the Jewish people to rats, right? Like saying, oh, you have nothing, against rats, but they're vermin. So if they come into your home, you're going to want to exterminate them, and all that. And he's like, I'm just an exterminator, and it was just so terrifying, the whole thing. Yeah, and it was so good. Just like all of a sudden you're just like, oh no. And he's like, saying in French, oh, it was so lovely to meet you, hope you have a great day, blah 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 blah. And then all of a sudden all the Nazis just shooting everywhere. And that's so terrifying that, as you said, she was doused in her own family's blood, just trying to run away, and him, au revoir, Shoshana, which makes all of that so much more terrifying in that scene that I thought you were going to do later on with the creme scene where, and we won't go too much into it, but just how she had to stay so stone-faced the whole time. And again, he knew who the fuck she was. He was just playing with her. And he walks
order dairy.
Right. And he walks away and her just suddenly just breaking down because regardless of how strong she is, that's still the man who murdered her entire family. So I love that. I love Shoshana in that movie. I had as an honorable mention really quick, the scene where her and her lover are getting the theater together for, the whole thing, because she's like, this is my chance to finally take them down. I just loved her. Like, she too had this amazing story of oppression and overcoming it and getting back at those who have done her and her people so much harm,
and also what I liked about, really quick, in that other scene too, is like, you can tell that this farmer, he's a hardened man, right? He's like, he's buff, he's sitting there, he's keeping his cool, but the slow tears he has like
Yeah.
for the family. And I think I read with something once upon a time, and they were like blaming him. They're like, "Oh, why couldn't he do better?" But it's like, what could
was he
he do?
supposed to do? What was he supposed to do? They would have killed him and his family.
It's like they already knew, and it's like, you know, he had already, like, you could say, like, in a way, it's like, it's hard to say it this way. He had done his part by hiding them, like, you know, he had went, you know, because he's risking his entire family's life even having them and taking care of them, because you have to assume, you know, he has a farm, he's taking care of these families that he cares about, you know, but what could he do at that point? Because Hansland already knew. He was just toying with them. He wanted to hear it out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, to me, as you said, the dread, because he wanted to do such a good thing in hiding that family, but in the end, it, you know, it was what it was. The punishment for someone hiding Jewish people was death. You know, and they wouldn't have just killed him. They would have killed his daughters as well. He had them to think about. It wasn't just a selfish thing. He had to think of his children, you know, and that is the tough thing behind all of this, you know, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. That part of history also, especially. And that's just how it was. And, you know, I'm glad that we're away from that, obviously. But Quentin Tarantino did just such an amazing job with that opening of that movie. It's so freaking good. Another movie that you should watch, and I've been pushing you a lot for it, is Jojo Rabbit. That also tackles the whole, like, Nazi and Jewish thing really perfectly. And I'm also watching and I'm going like a shit ton off topic, but I'm also watching right now Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, which has been shaping up to be a really good show. And there's this and it takes place in the 1930s before World War II broke out, where the Nazis were still considered just like a political party, right? And you have like these Jewish characters in it, like this Jewish cop who's like, I'm not gonna let fucking Nazis take over my goddamn city, you know? And it's like, so you have that bit of that in there as well, which is pretty cool. But anyway, Brittany, I love this scene. We are down to the number one, and I'm sure plenty of people are going to be like, there are so many others, you know, obviously Pulp Fiction and Uma Thurman getting freaking adrenaline shot into her chest, you know, like that is amazing. Samuel Jackson's "Do you speak English, motherfucker?" isn't amazing. Like, I know there are so many scenes we could have went through, but these were our favorite scenes, and that's all that matters. So no, but let's go through the list here really quick before we get to number one, and I'm going to try with my scribbled notes to make the best of this. So number 10 was the 3 scene from Inglourious Basterds. Number 9 was the tipping scene from Reservoir Dogs. Number 8 was the intro to Django Unchained. Number 7 was Say Goodbye, Miss Laura from Django Unchained. Number 6 was the scene with Big Daddy in Django Unchained. Number 5 is the dick sucking scene in Hateful Eight. Number 4 is the you're welcome. Number 4 is the shoe scene from Inglourious Basterds. Number 3 is the ear cutting off scene from Reservoir Dogs. Number 2 is the beginning of Inglourious Basterds. And my number 1 is from Inglourious Basterds as well. And it is a smaller scene, I know, but also kind of a larger scene as well, and is one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. I'm going to say it, right? Donnie, this German wants to die for his country. Oblige him. Oh.
Are you talking about the bear Jew?
Yes.
That scene was so good. Which, by the way, quick little thing that I thought was cool is that the guy that plays, you know, like, Donnie's his name, because I just always know him as the bear Jew, because the way that they say it's so funny. But, like, apparently a lot of these like movies connect, and he's supposed to be like the grandfather of another character in a later movie that takes place like more modern day, which I thought was fucking cool. But like, yes, continue. I'm just like excited.
No, yeah, I said that like someone or even Quentin had said that these movies actually do all exist within the same universe. But and really fun fact before I continue going. So the actor who plays the Bear Jew is Eli Roth. He is actually a huge name in the horror genre. He's directed like the Hostel movies, freaking, oh god, what's that one show with Bill Skarsgård on Netflix? It was like one of Netflix's first originals. But anyway, he's a huge like name in the horror business, but apparently Adam Sandler was originally supposed to play that part and he couldn't play it, so they got Eli Roth in there. So, but anyway, I love the Bear Jew scene.
I feel like that would have re-helped his
career, right? But no,
yeah.
I loved Donnie because the whole thing is like you have this group of Inglourious Bastards, which for the most part is a group of Jewish Americans, even though you also have the former Nazi and then an Austrian in it. But besides them, it's mostly a bunch of Jewish Americans who are like, they got one mission and one mission only, to kill Nazis. So they overtake this Nazi brigade and they're collecting scalps, which is a scene that I still can't freaking watch. Huh?
I said, yum.
But, and then you have where, so Brad Pitt's character, what is it, Lieutenant Rain or something? And he has this one surviving German. Oh god. He has this one surviving German who he's saying that, there's this, blah blah blah, they need information, point on the map, and what does he even say? He's like, listen, you take your sauerkraut licking fingers and point on this map. And he's like, the German's like, I would rather die than help a Jew or something like that. And he's like, well, all right. He's like, listen, he says something where he's like, we don't watch TV, so this is like watching a baseball game for us, like you made our day, And he's like, have you heard of the guy called the Bear Jew? And he was like, it's a myth. And he's like, and he has that scene. And he has that scene where, Lieutenant Rain's like, Donnie, this German wants to die for his country. Oblige him. And you get Donnie coming out. And he's so big, right? He's this big man. He's got all his, like, chest hair puffing out. He's got a baseball bat. He's making his way. And he lifts up all these... Huh?
I said he's fucking hot.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. That's why I'm happy Adam Sandler didn't play it. But he walks over to the German and he points with his baseball bat to all the medals on the German's uniform. And he's like, oh, what did you get those for killing Jews or something? And the German says something like, oh, for honoring my country or something like that, And they're like, look, and he just beats this fucking guy's head in with this baseball bat. And then he gets all happy, like, oh, he knocked it out of the park, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, and everyone starts clapping too. Cause it's like, again, this is like the biggest entertainment for them, the Bear Jew.
Negan.
So I love that scene. Cause first of all, I love the character. Right? I love Donnie's character. I love the whole setup to this, and I love the idea of having something that the Nazis were afraid of, because they even talk about it, like, even before that scene, like, oh, apparently there's someone they have called the Bear Jew, and it's like, I love that there's someone that they're afraid of, right? So, to me, I just love the whole thing. That scene is one of my favorite scenes in a Quentin Tarantino film, and certainly one of my favorite scenes in Inglourious Bastards.
I would say, like, I do remember that scene. It's so intense. And, like, I first, like, the whole Bear Jew thing is why I thought partially it was a comedy, too, because, they make it sound so silly at first until you go, oh, shit, he's a big dude. He's a big dude. And I think it's especially inspiring when you have, like, with everything that went on, and then you have like a Jewish person that the Nazis are so terrified of, and you're like, oh, that comeuppance. But by the way, quick parallel, this is gonna be like a weird hop, is so you do have Brad Pitt's character in it, right? But then you also have Brad Pitt's character in Fury, right? But then wasn't his name Don in that one? Who, by the way, I think was called, they called him Big Daddy or something in it.
War Daddy.
War Daddy. What's up with all these daddies and Brad Pitt in this fucking, like, top 10, Tia? Like, have you realized that? And Don's.
You just making all the thirst connections here.
You know what they say? Oh, there's connections if you look for them. Well, I'm looking for them, Tia, and I found them. That scene is so
man.
good because I don't know what I expected in that scene, and also like I like neat little nods to things because you go, oh, baseball bat. That time period, baseball was like the number one sport. Like people loved baseball, so to see like almost like that connection of like, oh, you have something that's very like American because where's he from again? Isn't he from New York or he's like from where is he from? The Bear Jew.
I think he's from Boston.
Okay, yeah, and you have him come in, right? And like you have to think about like all those neat little connections of like the time period, but also, him hearing about what's going on in Germany and being like, you know what, I'm going there. Doesn't he have like a Star of David necklace too? Like I remember him having a necklace.
Yeah, he has like I think either the star, which is a very common thing for Jewish people to wear, is the Star of David around their neck. But I think he also had medals. I think he had medals. He probably, what it was like, because the thing about like World War II is like, you had all these normal people suddenly like signing up for the war. He probably was like some kid from the neighborhood who liked baseball, and then suddenly, they hear about the fact that Jewish people are being slaughtered in Europe, and he just decided, well, fuck, I want to start fucking killing a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah, well, shit.
So
he does have the medals, and he has a necklace around his neck that almost looks like it's like a gold tube.
Are you looking it up?
Yeah, like he has like a regular necklace, right? Like he has the medals, but he also has like a gold little bar. I'll send it to you.
I think he's so hot. Look at him. Look at him.
Medals. You're right about the medals. I thought it was like a Star of David necklace, but it's like a gold tube-like necklace.
Yeah, I see that. I feel like that's probably something, but because I am not a Jewish person, I don't know, but you could probably look it up and there'd be, oh my God, look at that, all that sweaty chest hair. I apologize, people who are listening to this right now, but yeah, so.
Yeah, need a drink of water, you thirsty bitch.
A little. So let's really quick, let's go through some honorable mentions. I can't even talk right now. But yeah, so that was my number one. And before I go to you, Brittany, I did have a few honorable mentions that I kind of want to throw out there really quick. So I will say in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Leonardo DiCaprio, his character at some point has like a mental breakdown, and that is actually a really good scene. And then also at the end when Brad Pitt smokes a freaking cigarette dipped in LSD and he's tripping and he has to like kill the Manson family, that's a pretty like funny scene. But so I had the naming of the crew in Reservoir Dogs. I had Schultz shooting Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Django and going, I couldn't help myself. Remember when he was like, just shake my hand? And he's like, I won't say Avidase, because Avidase translates into see you later. But because I never want to see you, I will simply say goodbye.
Oh,
And that was
that's
like,
good.
ugh. And I was like, just shake his fucking hand, Schultz. You even said that you didn't want to die in Chickasaw County, and there you go, you're dying in Chickasaw.
I think what gets me at this scene is he was already, you can tell, like, one, from the very beginning, he didn't like slavery, right? But
Yeah.
you see, like, he was willing to, quote unquote, buy Django to get him to help him, right? He bought his freedom. But you see, like, the way, he's like, he was willing to buy that one slave, right, that gets ripped apart by the dogs, and
Right.
Django lets it happen because he knows, like, hey, we got to keep up this act, right? And you can tell, like, also after the Broomhilda scene, like, he's so bothered, and you can tell it's eating him up so much. And it's like his friendship with Django made it so much harder, to the point of not even wanting to shake that man's hand because it bothered him so badly. But
Yeah,
also,
and
just shake his fucking hand. We could have all been happy.
we could all been happy. I mean, like, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is like pissed as he was at the reveal. He was still getting a large sum of money, so he was perfectly okay with that. It's like, shake his fucking hand. I know he's this despicable character, but Schultz was just thinking about that poor man ripped apart by those dogs, And I love how also Schultz schools Leo. Doesn't he comes up with some
The
book,
Three
right?
Musketeers.
The
The
Three
Three
Musketeers.
Musketeers.
Um, and he says something, and they have that little exchange, and he goes, "The writer of that book was black." Like, pretty much like saying to him, like, you hate, people who look different than you so badly, but one of your, literary, like, novelists who you like was written by a black person, And I looked it up, and it literally was, and I'm like, this is crazy. So, that scene I, of course, had to, like, put on there. And, of course, Django kissing his, dead head going, "Auf Wiedersehen, my friend." But really quick, I'm sorry. I know I'm, like, going 1,000 miles per minute. But freaking the big reveal in Hateful Eight, the freaking Brad Pitt and his companion speaking Italian. And that's it. So those are my honorable mentions. Brittany, did you have any?
I was gonna say one, we talked about the creme scene because obviously we know that he only brought up the dairy for Shoshana, like, knowing exactly who she was, and that scene is pretty terrifying. I also like the scene in Django when him and, like, Django and Schultz are making the deal, like, hey, I'll give you your freedom if you'll help me, find the Riddle brothers. But when he shoots the sheriff, right, and the whole, like, town shows up, and you're like, how is he gonna get out of this? And Django's, like, so nervous because he doesn't quite have the confidence he has later on, because
Right.
he's like, to him, he's just, like, to him, he probably still feels like a slave at this point, and whether or not it was being allowed in the bar or not. And the guys, it's also like, remember, the sheriff, not the marshal. And like that whole scene, it cracks me up. Gonna say, I'm trying to remember any other scenes. Because obviously I love them, like, trying to speak Italian and all that fun stuff. But also, like, I'm trying to remember what else. Oh, I can't. Probably if I sat here, I could think, but right now, that's all I got for you, Tia. I used all my brain juices on you.
No, it's all right. I understand. I mean, obviously, Scoot McNairy's 2-second, cameo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood definitely takes some precedent there.
Right, right.
But yeah, I think that we did a great job going through all of our favorite scenes from Quentin Tarantino films. Again, as I said, I am sure that some people are going to put others in there. Pulp Fiction had a plethora of amazing scenes in it. So did all the Kill Bills, Jackie Brown, Death Proof. Like, I get that. Quentin has had a lot of great freaking movies, and it is hard to tie down everything in simply a top 10. But we did what we like the most, and that's all that freaking matters here. So, Brittany, before we sign off, let everyone know what we can expect from you, what you're doing, and all that good stuff.
I was going to say, you can always find me at Twitch. On Twitch, whichever way you say it, at Itty Bitty Brit. We are nearing 1,000 followers. We've been having fun playing a lot of, we were playing Star Wars. That's what's got me on such a Star Wars kick. It was Star Wars, The Fallen Order. It was amazing. The ending reveal really had me spinning there. I'm trying to think what else. You can find me at Itty Bitty Brit 0 on Twitter. And yeah, we've just been having a good time. I've been quarantined in the house till Monday. I only had the flu. Everything else came back negative. But I haven't been able to leave the house. So I'm kind of going crazy. So I've just been streaming every day. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Brittany's been going crazy after a week of being indoors. Us in New York have been indoors since frickin' March. So, hello. But yes.
You gotta think I haven't been trapped in the house yet. I'm feeling what you felt the first week. Now you're owning it, Tia. You're just owning it. No, I'm just joking.
I mean, it's great. I get to catch up everything that I want to catch up. There's so many awesome stuff out there. Then again, I lie because I'm like watching freaking My 600-Pound Life and Strange Addiction and 90 Day Fiance. So, really quality TV there. But
you're filling your noggin with some great things.
No, seriously. But everyone, please make sure that you check us out at geekvibesnation.com. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Vero, YouTube, all that good stuff. And I will be coming out with reviews later today for both Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. I know this much is true because Mark Ruffalo is killing it in that show. And I also have a review for Defending Jacob, which Chris Evans is killing it in that frickin' show. But those are some of the things that you should be expecting. I also have recent interviews with Carrie Burnins and Jesse LaFleur from Fox's Ultimate Tag. And soon I hope Kanan will be posting my interview with Supernatural's Richard Speight Jr. because that was a really fantastic interview. So thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to our top 10. Please let us know what your top 10 moments from Quentin Tarantino films are and what we should probably do next week. So, Brittany, thank you, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Oh, and happy Memorial Day.
I forgot it was Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day.
Yep. Alrighty, guys.